Hey, I'm here with Ron Pauleus. My name is Daryl Stetler with the Southwest Conference, and really thankful that you're watching this. I'm running into a lot of guys who are like, hey, what can we do that's not just, I'm going to be the senior pastor who's responsible for everything, all the preaching, all the ministry, and all of that kind of stuff. What can I do to work under somebody and have connections with mentorship and kind of get my feet underneath me and learn how to preach and have some practice? Ron did an internship at our church and kind of took that pathway, and we work together. He's on staff here at our church in Oklahoma City. So I wanted to share his journey with you a little bit. And so, Ron, thanks for taking the time to be here.
Thanks for having me, Pastor Daryl.
Privilege.
I was first introduced to Pastor Daryl back in, I think, 2018. Dr. Hamilton down at Hope Sound Bible College, who is the ministerial head there, got me introduced to Pastor Daryl. I specifically asked him for an internship where I can do urban ministry and work with somebody who's in the city, not in some farmland place, although we need those types of people also. But I felt God really wanted me to work in some type of urban ministry, and Pastor Daryl was the guy that Dr. Hamilton connected me with. Came over that same summer, did about 3 months or I forget however long it was. It was so long ago.
6 or 8 weeks, I think.
Yeah, 6 or 8 weeks. And then the year after that, I went over to Kansas, did some time there, and what I learned from my internship here, which was several things, like making sure I'm reading scriptures for myself, making sure I'm getting that intake, making sure I'm praying, making sure I love God, and then also the practice of preaching in series, which allows me not to come up with a message every single Sunday. I can systematically plan it out. So I use some of those practices and lessons I learned from my internship that summer in Kansas, where I was helping in the Olathe Church of God Holiness, just to make it through that summer. Ended up going back to Hope Sound, finishing the year off, and then I was there for some time, and it was during the year of COVID where everything was slow, everything was shut off and closed. Nobody was doing anything. The world stopped spinning, if you remember that.
Pretty much.
And in that slow period, usually this is how God works. Things are slow and quiet. I felt God say to me that I needed to be discipled more. I needed more I needed to have somebody pour more into me. And immediately I thought of Pastor Daryl and the time I had here. I want to tell you this, 6 weeks is too short. You need more time, because
It's true.
there's what you learn from the books, and I'm an avid reader, love reading, read a lot of what was given to us at Bible college. But I found that when I did my internship for 6 weeks, what I learned from the books, I had to put into real life, and a lot of it didn't apply just because of the people I was ministering to. They didn't need to hear about the Roman road. They needed me to just be right there sitting in the room with them listening. And then I can share the gospel. And at that point it was just, hey, Jesus can give you this comfort, or whatever it was. So I was able to realize that in the internship, it was just a tip of the iceberg of what pastoring was really about. I thought pastoring was about preaching on Sunday morning, preaching on Sunday night, and then sharing a Bible study on Wednesday, and you were done. But I quickly realized
The old joke about pastors only working 1 day a week, that's actually true, kids. It's all true.
Yeah. During my internship, I realized that Pastor Daryl was everywhere doing everything. During pastoring, you sometimes have to be a counselor and help people process through stuff, and other times you're the minister preaching the word, pastoring. Sometimes you're a friend. Like, you take on all these roles, and the book knowledge only helps you so far. And it's when you start to get into the word, taking action, being in that environment where you learn the things college would have never taught you, just because there's not room for it there.
Yeah, it's just not, college is not entirely set up to do that kind of work. It's a really great environment. It's just that it doesn't do that because it isn't set up for it. So in the Southwest Conference, we're huge believers in the potential of working with someone. And it may be challenging. A lot of our churches are smaller, and not everybody can make it happen where it's like, hey, we can pay 2 full-time salaries. Let's jump right in. That's not always possible. But the truth is, co-vocational work, like bivocational, like 2 things at once, ministry and marketplace, is actually a massively growing thing. And so we're big believers in like, okay, so can you have a ministry in the marketplace where you meet people, you make connections, you learn, you apply your skills in terms of the marketplace, and in that process, you have a way to help make connections for ministry. So Ron actually had this happen here recently. It's super cool to see that work, and I won't necessarily name the situation, but I'll let you tell about it a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So I am doing some real estate. I've started a real estate business here, wanting to buy some rental properties so that I could take care of my family, so that I can continue to minister and pastor and work on those types of things. Well, in the course of my networking in that real estate sphere, I met a guy who was also wanting to get into real estate, is a teacher at a community college, has a family, his wife's deployed, so pretty established guy. But he realized that I was a Christian. He told me that when he first met me, something was different about me, and he was attracted to me. And so this is him telling me this later. And so built a relationship, chatted with him here and there, and he's talked about wanting to narrow down on what he's wanting to do in the real estate sphere. And so he's talked about joining my team and working with us, seeing what we can do together. I had a project that I was attempting to close on and needed to raise some funds for it. And I communicated that to him because he had a friend. So we had that whole conversation. This was a Tuesday night, and we're talking on the phone, and we come to the end, and he says, well, I also wanted to talk to you about something else. And I said, okay, what is it? Give me an idea. You know, no one wants to go into a meeting talking about something they're not aware of. And he said, I want to talk about religion. And so I said, okay. This is 8 p.m. at night. I said, okay, give me a taste of what where are you at? And he said, loss. Wow. And so I had a conversation with him, met up with him at a Starbucks. We were supposed to only meet for an hour. We stayed there for 2. And I was able to share the gospel. We're doing a Matthew challenge together where we read 1 chapter a day, because he said, I don't know where to begin. I don't know where to begin. And I said, let's do Matthew, 28 months in February, 28 chapters, 1 chapter a day. You could listen to it. And 4-minute listen, you will be all right. So he's been doing that. I invited him to hear me preach from Psalm 16 that the Sunday after he mentioned he wanted to talk about religion with me. And he came to service, sat there in the back, and as I preached, he said that he was crying, and just this was exactly what he needed. After we started talking at the end of service, he started to tear up. When we met at that Starbucks, he was tearing up, and he said that he had some family members who would go through depression. And he would say to them, just be happy, like just do something happy and you'll be happy. Then he had a few moments in life where he was going through depression. And at the Starbucks, he said to me, I was wrong. I was so wrong about depression. You don't just do happy things to be happy when you're depressed. And you can see Prevenient Grace all over this. He said to me, if I'm wrong about depression, what else am I wrong about? And I shared my testimony with him, and we're still on that. We're still working together, still having those conversations, but you could clearly see him you could clearly see the work of God in his life. He was here this past Sunday. He's planning on coming next Sunday, and I just told him, take baby steps. Just show up at each Sunday, keep reading the 1 chapters. We'll text and say, hey, here's a quick highlight from Matthew 1 that stood out to me, and he shared what stood out to him. And so it's been exciting to be able to, one, provide for my family, still minister and pastor here, preach, but also to meet with literal unbelievers. You're at Bible college, I was, and it's a holy hub. It's like my professors are Christian, the students, and you get out and you realize, oh, there are people who need to hear about Jesus, people who need to be redeemed and saved.
So we're huge fans of that kind of ministry. So you get this opportunity to minister and serve, and I think that if you're in a spot where you're saying, man, I want to make an impact, I want to be a senior pastor, but I'm not sure if I'm at that spot right now, like, hey, throw me in the deep end of the pool. If that's not where you're at, and you want to start off with something where you're working with someone, you're working under someone, and even if it means I got to do some marketplace ministry in the process, I've got to like tie this together. That's awesome. We are super happy to do that. So if you are in that kind of zone, I just want to commend it to you that it's entirely possible that a couple of years of something like that will bear incredible fruit for your ministry long term, so that you're not going in cold. You've already kind of gathered a bunch of sermons. You've gotten some reps under your belt. The truth is, you don't know who you are as a preacher coming right out of Bible college. It took me a year of preaching 3 times a week before I figured out, like, oh, this is my voice. This is who I am in the pulpit. I'm not my dad. I'm not my uncle. I'm me. And so that took a while. And then another 3 or 4 years down the road, I'm like, oh, and here's another aspect of my voice. You gradually gather that. So Ron and I have had the privilege and really honor of working together. And in the process, he's gotten married, he's got a kid. So there's a lot. It's a lot, right? Yeah. But it's an incredible opportunity to just like join forces with somebody, learn a lot, and invest that 2 years of seed planting and small projects together, and learning and watching things happen, and little tidbits that you pick up about leadership and relationships and people and preaching and administration and all this kind of and outreach. And then you get a chance to apply that to a place where you're going to wind up going someday. And I know that it's entirely possible. Ron's not here forever, and I get that. And I just want to tell you that's cool. I understand that. That's okay. That it's not a forever thing. And I'm excited to see what God does with Ron's ministry for the next 30 years. And who knows where that takes him. And it's an honor to kind of run together for a while, and then to just spend the next 20, 30 years cheering for you. And so if you're interested in that kind of partnership, Ron, what would you recommend guys do? So here's a person who's watching. What's the next steps?
The internships were, as I said, too short, 6 weeks. So during that COVID time period, I actually said to myself, I'm going to come up here to Oklahoma City from Florida, and I'm going to spend 5 years here. So I'm already 3 years in. That was something I felt that was long enough for me to get rooted and grounded, figure out how God was wanting to deepen my walk with Him, figure out how and where He would want to lead. But it wasn't too long, I felt, or too short. Now, I think I might end up staying here longer than 5 years, but the reality is you want to go somewhere where you can stay long enough and not just, hey, I'm here for a year, goodbye, we just started to get to know you and we're pulling it back. And so I would highly encourage and recommend get connected with Pastor Darrell or Pastor Johnson and figure out the different ministries across the Southwest Conference that have senior pastors that would love to have a young person like you, a young couple, where, like Pastor Darrell said, you can work on the side, or you can find another job while you're doing that, but it also allows you to grow, to be discipled, and plan to stay there at least 3 years. plan to stay there at least 3 years. Get established, learn a couple of things. You might stay longer, or an opportunity might come up where after the 3 years, another pastorate in the Southwest Conference opens, and you go right there, right? And so find a place and interview the pastors. I did my internship with Pastor Darrell, and that's why I was like, okay, I like him. I want to stay there longer. I want to be discipled by him. I believe in what he's doing out there. So interview the pastors, find out what they believe in. I specifically wanted to be in urban ministry. So find, even if you're at a place where you're discovering, right? Ask Pastor Darrell, ask Pastor Johnson, and several others about what they're doing, and find that passion that God's instilled in you for you to serve him in and with. And once you find that place that's doing just that, go 3 years there and be amazed at what God will do in you in the process. I've grown so much.
Praise God. Thanks, Ron. I appreciate you being with us. And if you are interested in saying, okay, what's my very next step, reach out. All right. Text and call. You've got numbers on the brochure that we just gave you that you found this QR code on. And so all the contact information's there. In fact, I would encourage you, grab your phone, scan that QR code that is on that brochure, and schedule a Zoom call, okay? We can meet face-to-face, probably me and Aaron Johnson both will be on there. We can listen, hear where you're at, hear what your time frame is, kind of figure out whether you're looking to license with a group like the Southwest Conference. And if you're in that spot, we would love to facilitate that for you. So let us know. We'll look forward to talking to you. God bless you guys. Thanks a lot for being with us today. Bye.